Hello and welcome to the RHS Hampton Court Palace Garden Festival 2024.
Which I have to say, I think must be Britain's biggest garden party, surely, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the garden equivalent of Glastonbury Festival, right? And there's just so much going on. Over in the floral marquee, there are over 100 different nurseries and growers showing off their wares. There are 34 show gardens scattered all over the site. There's just so much to see and do here. It's packed full of inspiration. But you've probably been too busy to look around.
I haven't had time to look around because I have been doing one of the RHS feature gardens. So it's been sort of a lot of love, a lot of labour, but I have reserved enough energy to keep going to the end of the show.
Pleased to hear it. Well, I can't wait to see it. Now, there is absolutely masses coming up on today's programme.
From cutting-edge design ideas to the splendour of the floral marquee, we'll have plenty of advice for choosing and growing the right plants for your space.
Sue wanders through the RHS allotments looking for ideas and tips we can all try at home.
Rekha is on a mission to prove that anyone can grow, no matter how small your space or your budget.
And we'll be revealing the RHS peat-free garden feature designed by our very own Arit.
I do love this show. I don't know whether it's its size or the backdrop of lovely Hampton Court Palace, but it's just got a different feel to other shows, I think.
Yeah, it really has. And I love that there's so many gardens here, and they all sort of demonstrate different ideas, different things you can try out, and show that on virtually any scale you can create fabulous diversity.
Yeah.
Design has been really clever with their approach here. I mean, most contemporary gardens now tend to be this kind of rectilinear, interlinked kind of boxes and square forms. And it's so often kind of heavy concrete and slabs and loads of hard landscaping. But he's somehow got that look, but with much softer materials, so it's better for drainage, it's better for wildlife.
And also has introduced water into a small space. And water is so important in the garden. You know, the pollinators need to be able to drink from it, birds as well. But also as well, you're hoping to attract in those amphibians so that they can actually be eating those slugs and snails.
We could do with that this year, couldn't we?
Yeah.
The other thing as well, I've been quite bold and brave here to go for larger items in a small space. So this Acer Grizium is pretty chunky, and so is the pergola. But actually, by making that kind of bold move, I think it works proportionally.
There's a strong Mediterranean vibe in this garden, isn't there, for sure?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the fact that they've used these kind of Mediterranean shrubs that you probably wouldn't have thought about growing here, 20, 30 years ago. So pomegranate, lovely thing. Will actually fruit here. It's fabulous double orange flowers and it's gorgeous. And then over here, the Feijoa Celoiana, gorgeous flowers. Really interesting to see the way the two different shrubs have been treated. So multi-stemmed here and then taken up as a standard there. It looks great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, when you look at these plants, you know, they are sort of able to cope with that baking heat. You know, you've got the lavenders, you've got the salvias, the Stipa tenuissima, the herbs that are dotted throughout. And of course, I'm sure that many pollinators will enjoy visiting the Achillea and the salvias too. So overall, you know, it's got a real sense of unity to this space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about this garden, particularly the fact that this sunken section kind of lures you in and it feels like a warm embrace. You're just kind of immersed in all of this gorgeousness.
Well, it's lovely being amongst the planting. And it's a really tight colour palette. So this blues and celebrating the purples and the whites, you can imagine that on a summer's evening, as the light goes down, this garden will really sing again because you can really see those colours come in the half-light, which is really lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that they've run grasses all the way through the garden. It gives it that sort of slightly wild meadow quality. Calamagrostis over there. And of course, that's brilliant for supporting various different butterfly species, so we'll draw them into the garden.
But I guess also as well, you know, looking at the hardscaping, it's a very simplified palette, you know, by not using lots of different materials. It means that your eye is able to really celebrate the planting, and that's what you want in the garden, isn't it?
Exactly. I think it really works. floral marquee here at the show is absolutely packed with inspiration and loads of fabulous colour. And it never ceases to amaze me how easily you can set up a vibe or an atmosphere in a garden purely by the choice of colours and tones that you use. I'm trying to come up with inspiration for my own garden at home. Just having a bit of a play with this mix of plants, and I think it's nearly perfect. To get that kind of cottage garden feel, there's lots of pastels. Actually quite like that deeper tone in there as well as a contrast. So the penstemon, the ornithera, the evening primrose, this lovely nepeta. So those pinks are picking each other up. You get the darker calyx, the base of the flower there, which picks up the penstemon. It's sort of all falling together pretty well. I reckon it needs one more component. I think one of these achillea. This is quite a kind of washed out yellow, but it picks up that yellow in the centre of the ornithera. I think actually creates quite a nice palette. One of the modern approaches you often see in contemporary gardens, particularly in towns or cities, is restricting the whole colour palette down to just one tone. Of course, this white garden is a prime example. There are all sorts of subtleties to making that work. So to start with, you want to have different flower forms. You can have ball forms, spike forms, really make sure they contrast with each other. But I also think it's important to have plants like this cornice that have that cream, white and green variegation. It really helps pull the whole scheme together. Something I really like to do with these monochromatic schemes is just to add in a single punchy colour. So with all these whites, if I were to add orange or lime, really elevate it. But actually I think what could really work here is to use this, Salvia amistad. And so those kind of violet tones run all the way through the white and just help elevate the scheme and bring it all together. If you're looking to create a tropical kind of vibe in your garden, one of the simplest ways is to go for a really hot palette of colours. So the mix of reds, yellows and oranges really embodies that kind of feel. But I think what really helps elevate this is this lime used all the way through. And I particularly like the little burgundy eyes on this. This is Ascot rainbow. It's a form of euphorbia. The other plant which I think pulls the whole thing together is this Alstroemeria. It's called Indian Summer. Of course, it features all the colours of the rest of the palette, and it's got dark foliage which beautifully ties in to the Sambucus growing up here. And so this kind of palette will absolutely whisk you away overseas and give you that tropical vibe. And of course, the different colour palettes we've used and looked at goes to show that you can create a completely different atmosphere in your garden just based around the colours that you choose.
Roses are one of the stars at the show at Hampton, and this year there's a new rose in the floral marquee that I'm interested in. It's been launched by an amateur grower and it's his debut at Hampton, and we caught up with him a couple of weeks ago as he prepared for the show.
What fascinates me about the Persica rose, just that unusualness to them. They're beautiful, they're great for the wildlife. They really do shine out and just give that little bit of a vibrancy. Yeah, I just love a good splash of colour. When they flower, they literally are sort of smiling back at you, almost like they're saying, "Hi there, look at me," sort of thing. I'm Daniel Myhill. This is my garden here in Norfolk, where I've got the national collection of Rosa Persica hybrids. The definition of a Persica rose is a rose that has that red eye. A lot of the names have the term eye in it, and that is a play on the kind of, the flower form and colour, really. So this is For Eyes Only. It was Rose of the Year in 2015. Smiling eyes, eye candy. This is Your Lovely Eyes. This is one of my favourite roses because of the sheer flower power that it has. It has that wow factor, and the colours in it, a huge range from reds to oranges to pinks. For me, it gives that tutti frutti sweet shop feel. I started with roses really as a kid. I shared a bedroom with my twin brother for 16 years, and really that garden became my own sanctuary, my own solace when I needed it, and from there it really grew. The first time I saw a Rosa persica hybrid was in 2015 when I took my wife Hannah to the RHS Chelsea Flower Show. The Harkness stand there had a rose called Alissa, Princess of Phoenicia, and it was just so different. It just stood out from everything else, and it just literally captivated me. What you can see here is the different colorations that the flower has. So this bloom here is the fresh flower, lovely rich pink to purple eye with a creamy flowers with little touches of pink around the edges. But as this flower ages over a day or two, it goes to this more pinkier tones around the outside of the petal. Temperature, light, all affects how the roses, in terms of colour, how they look. Which colour do I prefer? Well, both. When you see these sitting next to each other, it gives the plant another dimension, which I think is what creates the real interest. 2015 was my first Rosa persica hybrid, and what we're 9 years down the line, and here we are with the National Collection. It's just been, a passion. I have no formal horticultural training, so it's just that geekiness in me, that I have, that collectaholic nature that I have as well. A bit of research, I got involved with the Rose Society UK. It just grew from there, really. The National Collection comprises 55 different Rosa persica hybrids, of which I've got about 100 plants. They come in all sorts of forms, so you've got floribundas, shrub roses, you've got some new climbers coming onto the market as well. They do have light scent. They're not the most heavy scented roses that you'll find, because that's often found in roses with more petals. They're repeat flowering, so if you keep deadheading them through the season, they'll reward you all the way through to the first frost, even as late as sort of November, December time. I like the naturalistic look of planting them in a mixed bed with herbaceous perennials, with annuals and bulbs as well. So they really suit sitting next to things like lavenders, salvia caradonas, nepetas, with those purple colours really make them stand out. Rosa persica hybrids, they come from a desert rose, and so they retain their genetics to be able to cope with the heat that we have. I think they're really going to be a useful rose when we look at climate change. In the last few years, we've had some real extremes of temperature, and we'd had a period of nearly 40-degree heat for a few days here, and actually they continue to flower through that period. So in terms of watering roses, when you first get your rose, either as a bare root or a potted plant, you really want to keep it well watered during its first growing season. After that, the roses don't need much, if any, water at all. So this is Your Lovely Eyes. It's been in the ground here 3 years now. The first year I kept it well watered, but last year, hardly had a drop. If I kept watering this, it's always going to think the water's near surface, so it sends out lots of roots in the near surface soil. If we get a period of drought, those roots are going to be really prone to that lack of water, and it's going to struggle to get the moisture it needs. Whereas if it can send its roots down nice and deep, there'll be more moisture in the soil at depth, and it will keep itself nice and happy. In having the National Collection of Rosa persica hybrids, for me it's really important that I share those with people and people can see them. So for the first time ever this year, I'm going to be exhibiting at the RHS Hampton Court Palace Garden Festival. My display is going to be 3 stage tiers, 30 or so different varieties, to showcase the variation that the National Collection holds. Here I am surrounded by my Hampton Court display plants. We're just under 2 weeks away from the show. We've got a lot of green, not much colour. My biggest worry really is that I just don't have any flowers. Otherwise it will be lots of pots of green leaves. This year I've got the enormous privilege of launching a new Rosa persica hybrid at the show called See You in Rose. It's a rose bred by the renowned breeders Cordes Roses in Germany. So this here is See You in Rose. No flower on it, and I've not seen it flower in my garden yet. It's the first time I'm growing it. Lovely tight buds, hopefully will develop and open and burst ready for the show. This will be the first time that I'll see it in flower, so I'll be like a kid in Christmas at Hampton.
Daniel, a couple of weeks ago everything was in green bud and now it's really flowering. How are you feeling?
Yeah, relieved, absolutely relieved is one way of looking at it, but it's fantastic. We've had a week of sunshine before the show. We really needed that sunshine, which brought the roses on, which gave us this great flower that we have behind us.
Yes, and you got a gold. Congratulations, well deserved. And another award.
Yeah, so I won the Best Plant Heritage exhibit as well, which is just unreal really, but
well, it's your first time for you at Hampton and first time for a new rose that you've got here.
Yeah, so the new rose we're launching is called See You in Rose. It's a beautiful semi-double flower, pink with a darker pink centre, and also it's long flowering. It will continue to flower from mid-May all the way through to those first frosts that we'll get in November, December.
So your border's going to be full of colour for about 5 months of the year.
Yeah, so you're getting an absolutely fantastic performance from your roses.
You hold the national collection for Persica roses. Why is it important to you to conserve them?
The species rose itself is a desert plant, so it's not like what you see behind us, but it's been a sort of 200-year breeding story to take those desert plants to these garden-worthy roses that we have behind us. To conserve that story, but also to promote British breeding and British rose breeding, is hugely important, I think.
There's definitely one on my Christmas list this year, and I'm hoping that I'll get it. Thank you for sharing all your roses with us, and congratulations, and enjoy the show.
Thank you, very kind of you, Sue, thank you.
The great thing about shows is that there is so much inspiration, so many plants, people wanting to get home and create the look. So I'm going to go and have a look in people's trolleys, see what they've been buying and get to see what they've been up to.
Those are for my balcony.
Ooh.
I haven't done my balcony boxes yet. And I saw them and I thought they'll look really nice with something else.
Is there more shopping to be had?
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
Veronicastrum, beautiful.
Yes.
Do you know these have got a particular compound in their flowers that bees get absolutely wasted on? So if you go out to the garden at night, once they're established, you'll see bumblebees there just like drunk, basically. What else are you looking for?
I don't know, my husband actually.
Ah, right, okay, well good luck, good luck.
For a foster called Devon Green.
Yeah, Devon Green.
He's
great.
after my son. I have a son called Devon Green, so I bought a foster.
How amazing is that? I
Yeah.
hope your son doesn't get eaten by slugs.
You seem to have a plant with no roots or pot. Where did this come from? Oh, it fell off. Yeah. I've heard that before. I've heard that before.
This, I have to say, looks like a mini border in itself. You're dragging around your own garden. I love it. So what's the plan here?
They're not all mine, can I just say that?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Well, you are such a cutie. You really are.
I'm a firm believer that anyone can grow, no matter how big your budget, no matter how big your space. I'm on the lookout for some easy win plants that are low maintenance but do very well in pots. I really like this display. These are all container plants. They're house plants, but what I like about them is the containers. These are things you could find in a charity shop. We've got biscuit tin full of succulents, you've got boxes, and you can even use an old casserole dish. You're actually creating a garden, but it's a mini garden. And then, of course, you have to think about what plants have gone in and make sure that they all love the same condition. These are all succulents, so they'll all do well. I really like this. We have got a really lovely arrangement of ferns. They like the shade, but they also like a bit of light. So the one addition thing you have to have is grow lights, because plants do need a bit of light. Plastic pots are a bit unsightly, so hessian or even any material would be really good just to make your container look pretty. Great idea. Here we've got a really good display of vegetables. You can grow any vegetable in pots, but you must consider the root size. So something like carrots will need long pots. Something like lettuce can grow in a very small pot, and one lettuce per pot is perfect because all you'll be doing is picking a few leaves at a time. I've really loved seeing everything here today. No matter how much money or space, there is something that will fit in that place, and that's what I like about using pots.
With the cost of living crisis, creating a beautiful garden might feel like an expensive luxury, but the money-saving garden goes to prove that it's perfectly possible to create a beautiful space that won't cost you the earth. Self-taught gardener and social media star Anya Lautenbach helps people transform gardens on a budget. This garden is full of hard-working plants that can be easily propagated, grown from seed, by taking cuttings, or by division. Anya, I have to say, your garden just feels so rich and sumptuous.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it. And I really hope that people will get inspired by my approach. There's so many ways people can save money in the garden. In the first year, when we moved to our current house, I have propagated 120 lavender plants, but they were all propagated from a few plants that my neighbor offered me and said I can take cuttings from. And this is a great example because lavender has to be pruned after flowering in late summer. If you simply remove one of the stems and reduce the lower foliage, this is a perfect cutting.
And there's a few other techniques you've used in the garden, so I'm guessing with the agapanthus you would collect seed from that?
You could divide agapanthus, but it's a very exciting thing to do, to grow agapanthus from seeds.
What is your top tip?
I think don't think of any plant material as waste. You can turn branches into plant support, cuttings, prunings into your new plants, grass cuttings into mulch. Anything that your garden produces can be turned into something useful.
Anya created the garden with plantsman Jamie Butterworth. Jamie, I have to say the garden looks absolutely superb.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's been a privilege to work with Anya. She's such an inspiration, and to have the opportunity to translate her ideas and her philosophy into reality and hopefully help to inspire so many people and show them that you don't need to have a huge bank account or a huge garden or a huge amount of space in order to have greenery and plants in your life. And actually, we've tried to do it through this amazing mixed herbaceous border and show people that although yes, this might look quite daunting on first glance, actually there's only 18 or so different plants in here, all of which are very easy to propagate, taking cuttings or sowing them from seed, and actually in just a few seasons from a few initial stock plants you could create this very easily.
You've managed to produce all of the hard landscape for next to nothing.
Hard landscaping isn't my thing, I'm a plantsman, but we've really run with that money-saving theme. So we've got compost bays at the back that are upcycled and are actually generating compost from there. The building is made entirely out of upcycled, reclaimed materials that we've been able to scavenge and find. The exterior of the building is all scaffolding boards, and even the paving is upcycled from RHS Malvern Flower Show as well. So everything has been upcycled and really continue that message.
Fantastic. Well, I think you've done an amazing job to be able to pull all of those very inexpensive items together and make them look incredibly classy. So congratulations.
That's really kind. Cheers. Thank you.
This feature is all about Asteraceae. It's a celebration of the beauty and diversity of the daisy family. And it's the second biggest plant family on Earth, with over 32,000 known species. It's only the orchid family that's any bigger. It includes many much-loved garden flowers, such as the sunflower, dahlias, and of course asters, but also some less obvious edible cousins, such as lettuce, tarragon, and endive. Like all families, the daisy family has some common traits, like this daisy head that's made up of tiny small florets and then surrounded by petal-like florets. However, the stems, the leaves and the roots can all be quite different. This garden is for the birds. Since 1970, Britain has lost almost a third of its wild bird population. But our gardens can play a vital role if we plant flowering species that can provide edible seeds and fruits that can really help our wild birds to have a source of food year-round. The Asteraceae family include many of these species, such as Helianthus, Rudbeckia and Echinacea, and there are so many more in this border that are here to inspire gardeners to plant these species for birds across the UK. This wildlife-friendly border really demonstrates the adaptability of the daisy family. All the plants here can tolerate sun and heat whilst being drought resistant and not really needing to have much moisture in the soil. But then coming around the border, these plants absolutely love moisture and damp, boggy conditions. And I love the fact that the little pond here is also great for wildlife. We love the flowers of the daisy family, but we mustn't forget the foliage. They can be bold and dramatic like Cynara cardunculus or the Inula, or maybe it's the colour, that of the dahlia, really dark, or the artemisia with the silver leaves. Either way, they can bring real drama into a border. Now that you've met the Asteraceae family, I'm sure that there will be at least one, if not more, that you can bring into your garden.
I've been coming here to the RHS Hampton Court Garden Festival for at least the last 25 years in one capacity or another. And the whole site is absolutely packed with inspiring horticulture. There are show gardens, there are allotments, there's endless veg, and of course there is the spectacular floral marquee. The whole site absolutely full of colour and a paradise to be in at this time of year. Now, still to come on today's programme. There'll be plenty of grow your own inspiration on the RHS allotments. We meet the wildflower growers trying to change the public's perception of weeds. And we reveal the resilient pocket planting plots chock full of ideas to help future-proof our gardens. In the next few years, the RHS will be banning the use of peat in all of the gardens and at the shows. So this year, Arit has created the RHS peat-free garden to prove that you can create a plant-filled paradise without the use of peat. This is looking absolutely glorious. That's my favourite garden at the show. It really
Thank you.
Of course, peat-free is something that's, I guess, really close to all of our hearts.
Well, when I started to garden, I had no idea really what peat was. I was aware of it. I knew it was in our compost bag, so just merrily carried on gardening. As I've learnt more about peat and peatlands, I've realised their importance. They're huge carbon stores. They store more carbon than a lot of our rainforests. Peat formation is a very slow process. It's the vegetation decaying in anaerobic wet conditions. It takes up to 1,000 years to create 1 metre of peat. So therefore, us extracting it at a huge rate means it's not replenishable in our lifetime.
But I think your garden here just brilliantly demonstrates that it's absolutely possible to grow just about anything peat-free. You've got all the kind of perennials and annuals here, sumptuous colours, you've got all the edibles, you've got herbs, you've got plants for growing in shade. I love the palette of planting you've got. Actually, I've got to ask, I don't recognise this allium. What is it?
That's allium summer drummer. It's a real beauty. It kind of can get really tall, so I love it in the border, sort of floating across the top there. We wanted to sort of show this vibrancy in the middle of the border, so the cooler colour palette, framing the ends, and then kind of come to sort of a crescendo. So it's almost like an outdoor vase, if you like.
this is such a different palette, all these shade lovers and kind of moisture lovers, and even down to the aquatic plants.
All grown peat-free. You know, the shade plants, this damp, boggier plants, pond plants. You know, it's so much now that can be grown peat-free.
Have you found the horticulture, the gardening with these alternative composts, does it sort of shift things, the way you approach things?
It does. The growing media that you would use can dry out a little bit more on the top layer. So sometimes you can find that you have to water sort of little and often. And as a result of that, then the feeding regime is little and often, because what you don't want to do is overwater it and it leach out. It's experimentation for sure. I want visitors and gardeners to know that they can confidently grow plants peat-free and know that they are helping the wider environment by doing so.
And I think this absolutely proves it. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. Gardening with the environment in mind has been part and parcel of this year's festival. And the new resilient pocket planting gardens have seen first-time designers create small spaces packed full of great ideas to protect our gardens from climate change. And they've been mentored by gold medal winning designer Tom Massey.
For me, a resilient garden is one that's in tune with nature and its location. A garden that is designed to survive and thrive in the face of the climate crisis. So as gardeners, we're facing many fresh challenges, whether that is, extreme heat in the summer, whether that's waterlogged, wet winters, new diseases affecting plant health. It's a really challenging time to be a gardener. So, I was really excited to be asked to mentor budding designers who have the challenge of creating resilient gardens at this year's Garden Festival. With just 3 weeks left before the public and judges get to see the finished gardens, we've come to a peat-free nursery for inspiration and see what's looking good.
I actually worked in software for the last decade, so this is quite a change. I've never done anything like this before, so why not start with a show garden, I thought.
Marina Lindell's design seeks to improve community life by providing healthy, nutritious food to those who cannot afford it.
Every part of it is going to be edible. I'm growing some of the plants for myself as well, so sometimes I have sleepless nights and I get up in the middle of the night. I'm just measuring if they have already grown a tiny bit.
Not a lot of people know, but cornuscusa are edible as well, so this will turn into a red berry that's an edible fruit.
So Tom has been really helpful because he knows some plants that I've never heard of, and they're definitely going to be included.
This is Malus turingo. It's a crabapple with small fruit, but the shape of this is a really good focal point for a show garden. I think you should tag it quick before anyone else does.
Yeah, on it.
Resilient gardening has been integral to all the show gardens I've created, from Hampton Court last year to RHS Chelsea this year. Obviously, show gardens are often large-scale projects, but these resilient pocket plantings are all about smaller spaces and attainable planting design, showing that resilience is achievable even in a really small space.
We actually come from quite diverse backgrounds. Helia was a lawyer and Sonia was an interior designer, and I worked in pensions, and we did a career change.
We volunteered on a number of show gardens over the year with our course.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting to get the opportunity to do our very own.
Sonia, Sally and Helia's garden is inspired by the resilience of children who have been impacted by traumatic events.
We've chosen really vibrant, colourful plants, joyful plants really. And these are plants that people should be able to use in their gardens in the next 30 years when our climate is changing. That's such a thing of beauty.
It's wonderful. And look at how it moves. The movement of it, I think is really important.
We hear it a lot, but it's essential to get the right plant in the right place, particularly for a resilient planting design. And it's something the judges will be looking out for as well. So the designers need to be really careful. They're selecting plants that are suitable for the conditions that their garden is displaying. So this really elegant grass is Stipa pseudoichu. It's very drought tolerant, very wind resilient. It's got fine feathery foliage, so wind passes through rather than snapping the stems. And this is a really good plant for an open, sunny, exposed site. This is Euphorbia mercenites, a really, really drought tolerant plant. It's got very succulent leaves, and this kind of glaucous blue foliage is really good at reflecting the sun's heat. This would be great in a gravel garden and in a coastal location, anywhere where you need a plant tolerant of exposed and dry conditions. And it gives you this kind of year-round evergreen euphorbia structure, so really interesting shape and form. With increasingly wet winters, it's important to choose plants or have plants that are also tolerant of wet conditions. And this Iris chrysographes black form is very tolerant of boggy and waterlogged conditions. So a really great plant if you want to add that statement drama. It's got a really interesting yellow stripe as well on the petals.
Do you think there will be more of these seed heads coming?
There should be, yeah. If you look at, you can see, if you look in, there's actually, these should be spot on for Hampton Court. They're just coming through. Saatchi, James and Marco want to make a garden resilient to a future drier climate, inspired by the North Essex coast.
We think resilient planting is sort of really central to garden design and planting design going forward, because really it all comes down to sort of sustainability. So you don't want to be overwatering plants, using too much water, but also you don't want to be selecting plants which will die and which aren't suitable for our future growing conditions with climate change.
This will be a good one,
yeah.
Definitely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, tag them quick.
Yeah.
It's been a great day today. It really reminds me when I was first starting out doing my first show garden. So lots of enthusiasm, lots of amazing plants have been tagged. Can't wait to see them all come together, but anything could happen with the show garden, and you know, we'll see them at the build, we'll see how they all come together. So we're here at Hampton Court, we're on site now, and the gardens are really starting to come together. And for me, this part of a show garden build is so exciting. The ideas that you've had in your head that have been on paper are really starting to come to life. So Marina, tree is in. What do you think?
I love it. Love the shape. Fits in perfectly.
Today is all about the planting, moving plants around and seeing how they interact with each other and making sure we've got the composition and the balance and all the colours kind of right. So that's where the challenge is today.
Hayley Herridge is creating an oasis for bees.
Got this salvia, really great for all sorts of different kind of bees and butterflies. Insects are very sensitive to climatic changes and temperature changes, so a solid network of habitat is really, really crucial. The area of gardens within the UK is bigger than all our national nature reserves combined, so if we all do a bit more in our gardens for bees and other pollinators, then combined we can actually contribute a huge effort, and I just think that is so inspiring and positive for biodiversity.
You know, I think we're on track. The girls are cracking ahead, we've had some great volunteers, everyone's really getting on. It's really interesting to see everyone's garden and their take on the same theme. I just love it.
Keep stepping back so you get an overview picture, take photos, take everything back out and then plant it. Sarah Cotterill is constructing a rain garden filled with adaptable plants which can withstand temporary waterlogging.
My day job is I'm an assistant professor in civil engineering, so a lot of my research focuses on stormwater management in the UK. The last 18 months had been the wettest on record. So if homeowners and gardeners can start to make small changes to their garden that are these resilient plants, I think it means they'll have gardens that are thriving rather than spending a lot of time trying to keep existing plants alive.
It's not long now till the show opens. Lots of good progress, but still a lot to do. I really can't wait to see the finished gardens.
Tom, you are a real veteran of the RHS shows, but you've done something really different this year. You've been mentoring designers. What I find fascinating is that term resilience has kind of driven all of these different designs, but they're so different, so diverse.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see the way they've all responded and how the gardens have come together. I genuinely feel really proud of them. So this is inspired by the North Essex coast, and it's called Winds of Change. So it starts here up at the top where it's more kind of green. This feels a bit further away from the seafront. And as you move through, the planting becomes even more rugged, even more resilient, and maybe feels a bit closer to the sea.
I have to say, the plant choice is not only beautiful, but these species really are going to be resilient to kind of salt-laden winds, to salty soils, just a heavy kind of blast and gust. And I guess this is a really good example. Astriplex halamus. I think its common name is saltbush, right? So it's a coastal plant, it can cope with all of those things. And I've noticed in the wild, you often get these little salt crystals on the outside of the leaves, and so it's clearly drawing it through its system. It's the perfect resilient plant for the area. Yeah, very salty leaves. If you try them great in a salad, they add that little kind of zing of coastal flavour. Nice. So this is Marina's garden, and I think she's done a fantastic job here with creating this, playing with this idea that you can have a whole load of edible plants, but that have beautiful kind of ornamental quality. What I love about this garden is the playfulness, all the little pathways, you know, as you said, there's so many things that are edible or ornamental or both, and it's a really great way, I think, to bring community together, to provide space for people to gather, but also things for people to do, to eat, to try, to taste, particularly for kids. It's such a fun space, and I think it is really successfully done. It kind of has a lovely continuity through the whole planting. I think this kale is really special. I love that kind of deep burgundy purple tone, a splash of yellow at the top. I think it's gorgeous. And then actually interestingly down here is this tree spinach, which again, it almost looks like an ornamental, that sort of pink centre to it. But of course you can eat it and cut it through the season. I think it's great. Tom, I notice you've acquired a rather natty little brooch there. So this is actually a buff tip moth, and this has evolved to look like a birch twig. And this garden here is all about attracting moths. They've been running moth traps overnight. They've got 400 moths and 50 different species in one single night, which I think is quite incredible, really. And of course, the plants that Sarah has chosen here are absolutely perfect to support both day and night moths. So something like this little scabious, masses of little flowers packed together. They can crawl around on the top. There's lots of pollen and nectar. And actually, I think this kind of matrix planting, all sort of mashed together, is almost like the natural meadows that these guys would hang out in. I think across all of these gardens there's so many take-home ideas, whether it's designing for drought, for flood, for pollinators, and it's just incredible how all these designers have brought these gardens together. First-time designers, you know, I feel so proud of them that they've created these incredible spaces and really showcased that even in a tiny garden you can really celebrate resilience. Native British wildflowers form a vital part of our landscapes. They provide food for pollinators and they provide habitat for wildlife. But what is the real difference between a wildflower and a weed? Well, Charlotte and Fred Den are a farming family from Kent on a mission to prove that wildflowers really do have a place in our gardens.
My childhood was going around farms where the priority was wheat. What you're seeing now is a complete new mindset. The main part of the business is seed processing for wheat, barley, oats, and only more recently now processing wildflower seed for general public.
We're reframing weeds as useful and ornamental additions to gardens. By taking our wildflowers to Hampton Court, I'd like the people who visit our display to stop and stare and think, wow, these look like beautiful garden plants.
My polytunnel's slap bang in the middle of our grain store. It's quite an unusual setting for a wildflower grower. Cultivating the weeds that farmers were trying to get rid of in their arable fields. Most of what we're showing, I've sown myself here in the tunnel. There's a bit of a misconception with wildflowers that you can just scatter and go and up will pop this meadow effect. especially with the annual species, you might find that there's a really strong showing in the first year, and then in the second year, if those seeds haven't hit the ground again, the plants won't re-establish. So the really nice thing about sowing them into your border is that you can collect the seed yourself, you can re-sow them in the autumn or the spring, and you can make sure that you get those plants back again year on year. I really want to show people that they can introduce wildflowers into planting schemes that they already have in their gardens. So here we're showing not only a container full of veg that we can harvest and eat, but it's multi-purpose. This combination of edible plants will be coming with us to Hampton Court and featuring as part of our wildflower display. This plant here is self-heal. The leaves are edible in the same way that you can cook spinach. So it does need to be cooked, but it gives you the same texture as spinach. The young leaves of kidney vetch are edible. You can harvest them and put them in your salads just like you would rocket. They're really nutrient dense. The kidney vetch is a larval food plant for the small blue butterfly, which is in decline at the moment. It's a really vital plant because this is the only plant that particular species will lay its eggs on and the caterpillars feed on. All of our native plants are doing something for nature. You know, they've been designed to do that. So if you love poppies, plant poppies. If you have a white colour scheme, choose things like wild carrot and yarrow. You know, you really can't go wrong. This is samphoin. It is one of the highest yielding nectar producing wildflowers, so it's ideal for anybody who is planting for bees, and its roots are also nitrogen fixing, so it's great for soil health. Wildflower species like samphoin, viper's bugloss, they replenish their nectaries. I think it's within like 5 or 10 minutes of possibly even quicker. And there's, you know, the opportunity for another insect to come in and take a feed. Yellow rattle is the secret weapon for encouraging wildflowers into areas of existing grass because it's a semi-parasitic wildflower. So it draws the nutrients away from the grass dies back, exposing the soil, which then wildflower seeds can establish in.
So here, where we've got a bit of an abundance of yellow rattle, the area's opened up, you've got other species coming through. To my right, where there is no yellow rattle, the grass is thick and other species would struggle to really break through unless they were very competitive, such as this here. But you would struggle to get a real blend and mix of different species. If you think of sowing yellow rattle, it's best to be sown fresh as soon after harvest as possible, really from late July through till early November at the latest.
I'm sowing corn cockle seeds. It's a really simple one to get going. The seeds themselves germinate readily, and from germination to flowering, it's quite a short period really of sort of 60 to 80 days. So you'll have flowers at the end of September. When you're sowing wildflower seeds, it's really important to put them on the top of the surface. They don't need to be covered in any soil. The most important things are soil contact and the moisture content of the soil. So get your seed and just push it firmly into the soil, and then whether or not you direct sow them out in your border or a pot, or you sow them in a greenhouse, it's really important to keep them well watered, ideally with rainwater. Viper's bugloss is a wildflower with a purpose. It has a really strong tap root which goes deep down into the soil, and it's great if you have areas of compacted soil. It also works really well in chalky or dry soils because it's very drought resistant. It's often called Viper's bugloss because it has a sort of serpentine appearance. The colour of its blooms sort of change as it ages. They go from a really deep blue
through to a really nice pink. Then it repeat flowers as well. You can deadhead and the plant will put its energy back into producing new flowers. It's a great self-seeder, so you'll find it spread through your borders if you allow it, or you can just cut it back before it goes to seed. Wildflowers, weeds, whatever you want to call them, they're absolutely brilliant and should be treated more like the heroes of garden planting than the villain. So I'm really looking forward to taking them to Hampton Court and to reframing the way that gardeners look at them.
Charlotte, this looks great. How's the whole build been for you?
It's been a real learning curve, but it's been a fantastic experience, and we're absolutely thrilled to be here representing wildflowers.
I think a lot of people limit themselves to thinking these plants can only be in a meadow, but actually it's so lovely to see that they can be used in all these different contexts. The Viper's bug loss there, I just think it really changes it. Putting it in a container truly shows it off, and you've done a few other interesting bits like that here.
We have, yes. We've got the white clover here. We've taken it out of context, so normally you'd find it matting out across your lawn. Here we've allowed it to spill over the pot. We've ornamentalised it. It looks beautiful, but it's working really hard for the environment as well. The flowers of clover are exceptionally nectar-rich.
And I mean, it's really important, I think, for gardeners to try and embrace some of these native plants. I mean, it's shocking. We've lost 97% of our native meadow in the last 100 years.
It's really upsetting, and I think the attitude towards seeing wildflowers growing, it is starting to change. We're starting to recognise that these plants have a place. We wanted to show gardeners that if you look at them in the same way that you would look at a verbena or a cosmos, you know, you can plant them with intention and they can look really beautiful. What you've done here just going to brilliantly demonstrate to gardeners that you can actually use a lot of these kind of native plants, but to use your word, to ornamentalise them, put them into borders, provide for wildlife, and actually these are really garden worthy, so thank you. Thank you, Nick.
I love growing vegetables, and I've got my own allotment, so I always come to look at the allotments at Hampton Court. It's full of make, do and mend creativity, and hopefully I'll find some ideas I can take home with me. So here I am in the Found Garden, and I'm surrounded by repurposed and recycled things. They've turned this sink into a small pond, they've used the wood as paths and crates to grow things in. And down here, I've got a lovely example of a wildlife hedge. If I had a trowel, I'd be digging this one up and taking it home. This is an amaranth, and you can use the baby leaves in salads. When they get a bit bigger, you can cook them as you would do spinach, and then they send up these spires and they produce millet seed. Great for the birds, or you can make millet porridge. This is Nature's Haven Tea Garden. All the plants in this garden have a purpose, even some that we would consider as weeds. So many of them can be used as tea, and some of them can be used as sustenance for bees and other insects. Either side are some raised beds for people with mobility issues, and in the beds are planted lots of plants for making tea. On this side we've got chamomile, which people take in tea to help them sleep and relax. And then we've got mint and fennel, which helps with digestion. And over here we've got eucalyptus, which helps when you've got a cough or a cold. This is Grow to Learn, Learn to Grow. And all the plants on this stand have been grown by Bagshot Infant School. The children have got a really useful area where they've made plant pots from newspapers to pot on all their seedlings. And I was just about to throw away a pallet, but I've been inspired because they've made a herb garden out of an old pallet with a self-watering, solar-powered system. This allotment proves you're never too young or too old to get growing.
We've flown the flag for weeds, and now it's time to celebrate moss. And this garden certainly has done it. It's sat in Manchester in a wet northeasterly situation, and that's why we've got this abundance of ferns and brunneras and hostas, all those plants that love shady conditions. But really, it's the moss that is the star plant. Moss has the ability to store more carbon than bare soil, and it's absolutely brilliant at purifying the air. And it acts like a sponge. It has the ability to soak up so much water, which slows the flow in urban settings across all of the hard landscaping. But the other thing that I think it does is transform a space. I love the way that it's creeping over this paving, really connecting and unifying the space, softening the edges and adding more green vibrancy, which is very good for our well-being. I would say, if you're looking at moss and you're looking to remove it in your space, think again. Embrace all of its wonderful benefits.
Hey, Arit. I really like this RHS feature garden. It's kind of all about shade, but it's a masterclass in, I think, the right kind of planting for shade. It's all these layers of green. Of course, so many of these plants take on different tones. The fern is bronze in autumn. The rose takes on fantastic autumn colour. I just think it sets up a really lovely kind of lush atmosphere.
Oh, it's really lush, that kind of calming feel. Jungly feeling in there.
Yeah.
But look at this.
Yeah, I mean, the spirit completely changes once you're through here. And of course, this is the sunny side of the site. Beautiful palette of colours, pinks and blues running through. It's agapanthus, of course, perfect for pollinators. And I'm just spotting in the distance as well, that blue catanad. It's just gorgeous.
Oh yeah, no, I really do like them. But take a look at this. I love this. I think it's so clever. Brings you up and elevates you above the actual border. So now things have got a bit smaller, all of a sudden the grasses have come up to me. And that's what I love about these shows, that they transport you to another place. Tell me, what's been your favourite part of the show?
Oh, it's always the same for me. It's got to be the nurseries and all the plants I can buy and take home. Yeah.
Well, I will be checking your bags. OK, well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for here today at RHS Hampton Court Palace Garden Festival.
But the show is open all the way through until Sunday. So if you can get yourself down here, there's absolutely masses to see and do.
Now, Gardeners World won't be with you next week because it's Wimbledon, but in 2 weeks' time, Adam and Francis will be at RHS Flower Show, Tatton Park.
That is Friday, a slightly earlier time of 6 o'clock.
But until then, it's goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Gardening in 10 Easy Steps from Gardener's World is the complete beginner's guide book available to buy now. And meet the mother and daughter who've inherited a huge crumbling mansion, as told by Storyville on BBC iPlayer. Next, surprise, it's EastEnders.